Have you ever wondered why some people reach their 80s with a vitality that leaves everyone around them in awe, while others seem to age far sooner than they should? Most people would think about diet, exercise, or genetics, but there's something almost nobody talks about, something so ordinary and so close to us that it gets overlooked precisely for that reason: the way we take care of our own bodies when we shower. We're not talking about the ritual itself, but about the areas that day after day go untouched under the water. Parts we assume are clean because soap passed nearby, but that are actually accumulating bacteria, toxins, and grime that silently work against your health, your energy, and your appearance. And the irony is that most people who neglect these areas do so fully convinced they have good hygiene habits. The Stoic philosophers understood something that modern science has only gone on to confirm. The body is the temple from which we inhabit the world. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly when he wrote that we cannot separate the care of the soul from the care of the body, because each one feeds the other. Neglecting one is neglecting the other. Today, we're going to talk about 6 parts of the body that 99% of people forget to wash properly, and how that neglect, built up over years, may be accelerating aging from the inside out. This isn't about becoming obsessive with cleanliness, but about bringing a new awareness to something you already do every day. Because as Epictetus said, wisdom lies not in doing extraordinary things, but in doing ordinary things with full attention. And if you've reached this stage of life with the energy and clarity to keep learning, that already says a great deal about who you are. Let's start with the first of these 6 areas, one that everyone touches every time they shower, but that very few people actually wash. When we think about washing our hair, most of us do the same thing. We apply shampoo, scrub a little, and rinse. It seems like enough, but there's a huge difference between washing your hair and washing your scalp, and that difference, ignored for years, can take a toll we rarely connect to this habit. The scalp is one of the most active areas of the body. It has a high concentration of sebaceous glands that constantly produce oil, and it's in permanent contact with the environment. Dust, pollution, product buildup, and dead skin cells that accumulate layer by layer. When that buildup isn't properly removed, the visible result is an irritated scalp, dandruff, or an odor that shows up even hours after a shower. But the invisible result is more concerning. Hair follicles become clogged, hair weakens, and over time, that neglect becomes a factor that quietly but consistently ages your appearance. Ayurvedic medicine, one of the oldest health traditions in the world, spoke thousands of years ago about the importance of massaging the scalp with intention, not as a luxury, but as a maintenance practice that improves blood circulation in that area and, as a result, the health of everything that grows from it. Modern science backs this up. Studies have shown that regular scalp massage can improve local blood flow, which supports nutrient delivery to the hair follicle and slows the natural process of hair loss. But beyond the aesthetic, there's a philosophical dimension worth considering. Seneca said that neglecting small things is the first sign of neglecting yourself. And the scalp, precisely because it's so close and so visible, is one of those things we assume are fine without ever really checking. What we don't look at carefully, we don't take care of properly. The fix is simple. When you shower, spend at least a minute massaging your scalp with your fingertips, not your nails, using firm, circular motions that cover the entire surface. Rinse first with warm water, then finish with a brief splash of cooler water, which helps close the pores and stimulate circulation. This small gesture done with awareness, transforms an automatic act into a true care ritual that your body will notice over time. Because when you learn to pay attention to what was always there, you discover that real care doesn't require extraordinary effort, just presence. And that presence is the first act of self-love you can practice every morning before the day even begins. But the scalp isn't the only area that's been flying under your radar. There's a much smaller place, almost invisible, that hides more than you might think. There are parts of the body we can't see directly, and because of that, we stop thinking about them. Behind the ears is one of them. It's a small, discreet fold that the shower water barely grazes, and that soap rarely reaches with any real intention. And yet, it's one of the areas where sebum, sweat, and bacteria build up the fastest. Because the skin there is thin, it sits close to active glands, and it's sheltered from the air, creating the perfect environment for residue to settle in unseen. Have you ever noticed a faint odor you can't quite place? In many cases, the answer is in that small space behind the ears. It's not a strong or immediately obvious smell, but people who are close to you will pick up on it. And what makes this detail especially relevant as we get older is that with age, the skin produces sebum more irregularly, making this buildup more frequent and more pronounced than it was in youth. Epictetus taught that dignity is not something you inherit or achieve once and for all, but a daily practice exercised through small details. That space behind the ears is, in its humility, one of those details. Taking care of it doesn't change the world, but it does change how you see yourself and how you're perceived by those who share your space. Adding this area to your shower routine requires no radical change. Simply run a soapy cloth, or just your fingers with some lather, behind each ear, along the fold where the ear meets the head, and rinse well. A gesture that takes seconds and, done regularly, makes the difference between a surface-level clean and a truly thorough one. There's something powerful about learning to notice what used to go unseen, not as a criticism of what wasn't done before, but as an invitation to move through life with more awareness from here on out. And that awareness, applied to the smallest details of everyday life, is exactly what the great thinkers are pointing to when they remind us that transformation doesn't begin with big decisions, but with small acts of sustained attention. Now, if there's one area that draws even more indifference than the previous two, it's one that sits right at the center of your body, and that almost nobody dares to clean with real intention. Few parts of the body collect as much hygienic indifference as the belly button. It's a place almost nobody washes with any real intention, and yet studies from the University of North Carolina found up to 2,000 different types of bacteria inside it on people who considered themselves to have good hygiene habits. This isn't meant to alarm you, but to spark an honest reflection. How much of what we think we're doing well are we actually doing? The belly button, by virtue of its deep cavity shape, is a natural trap for moisture, sebum, clothing fibers, and dead skin cells that build up over time. In older adults, this problem can become more pronounced because skin tends to lose elasticity and folds become deeper, making it harder for water to reach the bottom without direct action. The result, when ignored for years, can range from a persistent odor to fungal or bacterial infections that show up as irritation, itching, or redness. Traditional Chinese medicine considered the belly button, which it called Shen Kui, a central energy point of the body. It was the gateway through which life entered before birth, and its care was directly tied to the body's overall balance. While the modern biological view differs, there's a common thread. Ignoring the center is not an option if you're seeking genuine well-being. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a wise man neglects no part of what has been entrusted to him, and the body, with all its visible and invisible areas, is the first thing entrusted to us. Tending to it honestly, without skipping over what's uncomfortable or what requires an extra step, is a way of putting that wisdom into daily practice. To clean it properly, all you need is a cotton swab dampened with warm water and a little mild soap, gently worked in with small circular motions to remove built-up residue. If there's any irritation or pain, it's worth checking with a doctor before continuing, as there may be an infection that needs attention. But for most healthy people, this simple habit, done once or twice a week, is enough to keep that area in perfect condition. Because caring for your body in its entirety, including the parts nobody sees, is an act of integrity. It's a way of telling yourself that your well-being matters completely, not just on the surface. Let's move on to the fourth area. It's the one that has worked harder for you than any other throughout your entire life, and paradoxically, the one that receives the least attention when it's time to take care of yourself. They have been your point of contact with the world your entire life. They've taken you to every place you've ever been, held you up through every moment you stood tall, every step you took forward, and every time you chose to get back up after falling. And yet, when shower time comes, most people simply let soapy water run over them on its way to the drain, assuming that's enough. It isn't. The feet are one of the areas of the body with the highest density of sweat glands. Each foot alone has more than 250,000 of them, which means they produce moisture constantly, especially when kept inside socks and shoes for hours on end. That accumulated moisture, combined with heat and darkness, creates the perfect conditions for fungi and bacteria to thrive. And as the years go by, the skin on the feet loses its natural hydration more quickly, leading to cracks, calluses, and a greater vulnerability to infections that are often ignored until they've already progressed too far. There's one thing most people miss, even when they wash their feet every day: the spaces between the toes. That narrow, damp area is where athlete's foot, an extremely common fungal infection, finds its first home. You don't need to have walked on a public pool deck or a locker room floor to develop it. Years of moisture trapped between the toes without direct, intentional cleaning is enough for the problem to appear, first as itching, then as peeling, and eventually as a chronic condition that becomes difficult to treat. Seneca wrote that those who only care for what's visible end up neglecting what holds them up most. There are few more fitting images of that idea than the feet. They're down below, out of sight, hidden for most of the day, and that's exactly why we forget them. But they are the foundation, and when the foundation weakens, everything above it feels the strain. Caring for your feet properly during a shower comes down to 3 concrete things. First, wash with soap between each toe, one by one, using your fingers or a small sponge, making sure the soap reaches all the way into each fold. Second, gently scrub your heels and the soles of your feet with a rough cloth or pumice stone to remove the buildup of dead skin cells that over time form calluses that can crack and become an entry point for bacteria. Third, dry thoroughly, paying special attention to the spaces between the toes, because leftover moisture is the greatest enemy of foot health. Traditional reflexology, practiced across cultures in Asia and the Americas, holds that the feet contain points of connection to every organ in the body. Regardless of the lens you look through, there's a shared truth that both tradition and science agree on. What happens in the feet doesn't stay in the feet. Taking care of them is an act of gratitude toward the part of you that has worked hardest without recognition. And it's also an act of wisdom, because healthy feet are feet that let you keep moving with independence, with confidence, and with the dignity you deserve at this stage of life. And if the feet are the foundation that holds us up, the next area we're going to look at is the gateway through which everything the body needs to function enters. An area almost everyone forgets, but one that affects the body in ways that go far beyond what you might expect. Think about everything you do each morning to take care of your mouth. The toothbrush, the toothpaste, maybe some floss. A ritual many people have kept up since childhood with remarkable consistency. And yet, there's a surface that shares that same space, present at every meal, every conversation, every breath, that the vast majority completely ignores: the tongue. The tongue is not a smooth surface. It's covered in small projections called papillae that within their folds trap food particles, dead bacteria, shed cells, and toxins the body itself releases overnight. When that layer of residue isn't removed regularly, the most obvious result is bad breath. The kind that doesn't improve no matter how well you've brushed your teeth, because its source isn't the enamel but that forgotten surface. But the problem goes beyond bad breath. Research published in the Journal of Periodontology has documented the link between bacterial buildup on the tongue and the risk of cardiovascular disease, digestive problems, and a weakened immune system. The bacteria that thrive in that layer don't stay there. They pass into the digestive system with every swallow of saliva, disrupt the gut flora, and generate a quiet, inflammatory load that the body must manage constantly. Over time, that low-grade chronic inflammation is one of the mechanisms that most contributes to accelerated cellular aging. In Ayurvedic medicine, tongue scraping is an ancient practice called jihva prakshalana. It was performed every morning before any food or drink, as the day's first act of purification, not as an aesthetic indulgence, but as a way of reading the state of the body. Because in that tradition, the tongue reflects what is happening inside. A tongue with a white coating signals a buildup of toxins. A pink, clean tongue signals a body in balance. Modern science, which arrived at similar conclusions by different paths, only confirms what those ancient physicians were already observing. Marcus Aurelius said that wisdom begins with knowing the true state of things, not the state we assume them to be in. Applied to the body, this means learning to observe it honestly. And the tongue, if you take a moment to look at it each morning, is one of the most accessible and most overlooked indicators of your actual health. Adding tongue care to your daily routine is simple. You can use a dedicated tongue scraper, available at any pharmacy, or just the edge of a spoon. The motion is gentle, from back to front, repeated 3 or 4 times without pressing too hard. Then, rinse with water. Done in the morning before breakfast, even before drinking water, this habit removes the bacterial load that builds up overnight at the moment when it's at its highest. There's something almost philosophical about this small act. Cleaning your tongue each morning is, in a way, preparing the ground for a new day. It's a gesture that says, what I accumulated yesterday doesn't have to stay with me today. And that attitude, applied to the body as much as to the mind, is the foundation of a life that keeps renewing itself, no matter how many years it's already traveled. We've reached the 6th and final area. It's the most visible of all, the one we show the world most often, and yet it hides a form of neglect that few people recognize as such. Some parts of the body are on display, whether we choose it or not. Our hands are always there, in every gesture, every conversation, every moment we reach out toward another person. And the nails, at the tips of those hands, are one of the first things others notice, often without even being aware of it. But beyond appearance, something is happening beneath and around them that has direct consequences for your health, and that almost nobody takes as seriously as they should. The space under the nails, both on the hands and the feet, is one of the most favorable environments for bacterial and fungal buildup that exists on the human body. It's a warm area, damp at certain points of the day, and shielded from direct contact with soap during a shower. When cleaning isn't specific and deliberate, that space becomes a reservoir of microorganisms that hands carry from surface to surface throughout the day, and that can enter the body every time we touch our face, our food, or any mucous membrane. A study published in the Journal of Hospital Infection documented that more than 80% of gastrointestinal infections have an origin point related to hand contamination, and that the subungual zone, the space beneath the nail, is the most difficult to decontaminate even with conventional hand washing. Not because washing doesn't work, but because without direct attention to that area, the soap simply doesn't reach it. The periungual folds, the skin that surrounds the nail on the sides, also deserve attention. With age, that skin tends to dry out, lift, and form what we commonly call hangnails or hardened cuticles. When those folds crack, they become an entry point for bacteria that can cause localized infections called paronychia, which produce inflammation, pain, and in more advanced cases require medical treatment. Preventing them is far simpler than treating them, and it starts with regular care that very few people actually practice. Epictetus said that the person who takes care of themselves in small things is training their character for great ones. There is nothing smaller or more telling than the condition of your nails. And we're not talking about having them perfectly manicured or meeting any aesthetic standard. We're talking about something far more fundamental: keeping them clean, trimmed, and the surrounding skin moisturized as a basic practice of respect for your own body. During your shower, spending a few seconds running a soft brush under your nails with soap is enough to clear away the day's buildup. For the feet, where footwear traps more moisture and dirt settles more easily, this step is especially important. After the shower, drying the folds carefully and applying a small amount of moisturizer around each nail helps keep that skin intact and supple, preventing the cracks that open the door to infection. Something shifts when you start paying attention to the details. It's not just a physical matter, it's a quiet but firm internal declaration that you still matter to yourself, that this stage of life is not the moment to give up, but the moment to be more aware, more intentional, and more true to yourself than ever before. And with that, we've reached the end of these 6 areas. 6 places on the body that 99% of people overlook, and that you, starting today, can begin to care for in a completely different way. Today, we've covered 6 areas of the body that almost nobody talks about, and that even so, have more influence over your health, your energy, and your appearance than most people would ever imagine. The scalp that nourishes every root, the fold behind the ears that no one sees but everyone senses, the belly button, that forgotten center holding more than we thought, the feet that have quietly carried us all along, the tongue that reflects the state of our inner world, and the nails, those small details that reveal the degree of care we give ourselves. None of these changes require money, extraordinary time, or effort beyond your reach. They only require what the Stoic philosophers called prosos, attention, the decision to look honestly at what you used to pass over and to act on what you find. Because aging with vitality is not a matter of luck. It's the cumulative result of thousands of small, conscious decisions made over the years. And every time you choose to care for yourself in the details, you're also choosing the kind of person you want to keep being. Someone who respects themselves, someone who hasn't given up, someone who knows there is still so much life ahead, and that this time deserves to be lived with dignity and fullness. My name is Gabriel, and if this is your first time on the channel, I invite you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of the topics we'll be covering together. And if you've made it this far, that says a lot about you, about your commitment to your own well-being and to keep growing no matter your age. That deserves to be recognized. To find out who made it to the end, I'd love for you to write in the comments, "I take care of myself with intention," and tell me which country or city you're watching from today. I'd love to read your message and know who's on this journey with me. Before you go, share this video with someone who might need it. There may be someone in your life who just needs to hear these words to change one habit. And sometimes one habit changed at the right time changes far more than just your health. See you in the next video.